I'm about to be giving some parenting advice on YouTube. And you know that that can provoke great danger. So. So, what is this video about? It is about how to keep your kids, how to have your kids present in the worship service, in the Christian worship service, regardless of age. Now, one of the first things I want to say is I will be giving some practical tips, and you could even interpret them as rules, but I would ask you not to. I will unpack some of the principles behind all of those, and that would really, I would like it if people were looking for the principles behind these. I think and I will talk about them explicitly, the principles will be the things that help you make decisions in a moment-to-moment basis. The second thing I want to say is that we have been, since we've been married, really, we have been a part of churches, many churches, having moved a lot, all of which encouraged the presence of children in the service. I say encouraged. Some of them, particularly early on in our marriage, there were families that wanted to do this, but, you know, some didn't like it, and some found it uncouth or distracting, or had this idea that our worship was thus holy because the children were there potentially disrupting things. So all sorts of environments, but throughout the years, this has been something that we have done and that we have participated in church communities that have done this. This also means that throughout the years, we have seen many families come in and want this for their families and try to do it. So one of the things I want to say is if you go to my church right now, I didn't make this video because of you, okay? So this is just something that people have often found helpful, just talking to us about how we did it. Our kids are in college and high school now. And honestly, that's what has brought me to wanting to make this video, is thinking about the fact that I'm approaching grandfather age, right? And when I look at other people's babies, I look at them at a different perspective. I look at them from a different perspective now. And it's really those sorts of meditations, thinking about my own children, where they are now, looking at younger families, comparing that experience. And I think that my beard is finally white enough to post this video on YouTube. So I am not going to make a defense for having children in the worship service. I assume that if you're watching this, you most likely already are eager for that. But you're just, looking for some tips and how-tos. But I would like to read a couple of passages regardless, just sort of encourage and confirm that for you. The first is from Nehemiah chapter 8. And all the people gathered themselves together as one man into the street that was before the water gate, and they spake unto Ezra the scribe to bring the book of the law of Moses, which the Lord had commanded to Israel. And Ezra the priest brought the law before the congregation, both of men and women, and all that could hear with understanding, upon the first day of the 7th month. And he read therein before the street that was before the water gate, from the morning until midday, before the men and the women, and those that could understand. And the ears of all the people were attentive unto the book of the law. I'd also like to read from Deuteronomy chapter 12. Then there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. Thither shall ye bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings, and your sacrifices, your tithes, and the heave offering of your hand, and all your choice vows which ye vow unto the Lord. And ye shall rejoice before the Lord your God, ye and your sons and your daughters, and your men servants and your maidservants, and the Levite that is within your gate, for as much as he hath no part nor inheritance with you. Oh, yeah, I guess I didn't read that last part about the Levites, but the Levites are interesting too, because it's the Levites themselves receive instructions. Make sure when you are enjoying the fruits of the wave sacrifices that you're there with your sons and your daughters. Okay, so there are three main principles that I'm going to bring up, and then I'm going to mention some negatives, some don'ts. And unpack some of the principles behind that, and then talk about some positive do's and those principles. And we'll see that, they're all connected. And I will unpack the principles I'm about to lay out for you as I go through these do's and don'ts. Okay, so the three principles are paternal participation. Dare we even say paternal leadership? The second principle is anticipation. And the third principle is training at home. Okay, so I'm going to start with the don'ts. And it's not because I prioritize the don'ts. So I do find that often, and when families are doing or permitting some of these things, that it can show a lack of understanding why it is that we're doing this, or what the goal for us having our kids in the worship service is. But these are my don'ts. First, don't let your little kids, we're talking little, all the way down to baby, okay? And at all times, I'm talking about every age, okay? But all the way down to baby. Don't let them be on the ground. Don't let them play on the floor. Don't let them play in the pews. They should either be seated or in your arms. So don't let them play on the floor. Don't let them play with toys. Do not give them snacks. And don't let them draw. Okay. That last one, I bet a few of you find particularly controversial. Gasp. Okay. Especially if, like, my church gives out handouts to draw. Draw stuff from the sermon. Okay. So obviously, this is my take and my attempt to share experience and wisdom with you. And at the beginning, I encouraged you to take it as you would. And so I repeat that here. Why these particular don'ts? Because what we're aiming for is participation. Okay. What we want our children to be thinking while they're in the worship service, regardless of their age, is, I am a part of this. We do not want to be doing anything to send the message of, this is a burden to you, and we are trying to cater to you. We understand that it's almost unreasonable for us to ask this of you. So we're going to take these extra steps because we understand that this is onerous for you, 2-year-old, 1-year-old, 6-month-old. Now, with all of these things, will there be a moment? Will there be a time? Sure. But I think you will find that the positive things we're going to talk about address the concerns. So I mentioned, for example, here that we don't want to send the message that this is a great weight, too much to ask of a kid, and look at the things we're doing to make allowances for that. We should be making allowances for that, but we should be making allowances that don't send the message of, you're not a part of this, and it is so it's a really big deal of us to ask you to do this or expect it of you. Okay. So we want to be helping our kids, considering their frames, not having to rely on a bunch of strictness or a bunch of rules, be still all the time. We don't want that. But we do, what we don't want to do is to make allowances that basically mean that whatever the kid is doing, it is not what everyone else is doing. So that's the encouragement. Encourage the kid to be doing what everyone else is doing. Well, our service lasts for an hour and a half, 2 hours. How do we do that? Okay, so let's talk about that. So first, I would encourage the dads to be really, really involved in this process. And I think particularly as families have more than one kid, what often happens, I think, through natural impulse very often, is that the mother will be with the youngest child or the youngest children, and the father will take the older children. And I would strongly recommend that you guys consider a possibility of having the father be the point for the more difficult children, usually the younger children. You'll make calls Sundays to Sunday. Maybe your little 6-month-old has the sniffles. Maybe your little 1-year-old's had a really crotchety day. So you just do what you think is best, obviously. But I would strongly recommend that the father be involved, that he, more often than the mother, be the one to discipline if discipline is necessary. That he very often be the one, to go in the back with the wriggly child or the crying child. Don't make it just a mom job. So that's the first principle, right? Paternal participation. The next principle is anticipation, and that's heading off trouble before it starts. I think a great example of this is something that we often did, which is, so, basically the idea here is you don't want your kid to associate fussing or behaving badly with the reward of going out and getting to play. So particularly, that would be another don't, I suppose I would toss in there. If you just take your kid out of the worship service, that's not an opportunity to, oh, well, look, we're in the nursery, let's play with some blocks while we, pull ourselves back together. Because, again, that's reinforcing the idea that the worship service is a really big burden to ask of the kid. And so, let's refresh. No. What we're doing is we are trying to get back in as soon as possible, because this is really important that we all participate in this together. And I cannot overemphasize to you guys how young the kids are, and they notice, look, I'm doing the things everyone else is doing. And that not letting them play when they're out back, also goes along with the no snacks thing that sends the same message. Sunday is so important, and Sunday worship is so important that I would even suggest, so like feed your kids ahead of time. There's no need for snacks in that moment. Sleep. These last couple are ones that my wife, told me to be sure to bring up. Sunday is so important that it may be that you should consider your sleep schedule during the week is one that accommodates the worship service. So the basic rule of thumb for the principle of anticipating trouble is not waiting until there's a problem, until there's trouble or fussing. And this may not seem like something that needs to be said, but think about it. Or think about being in the service with your little kid. And, oh, look, we're on this super long streak. This is going great. Finally, this is the week where Johnny got it. As soon as you have that thought, think about dipping out with him, just taking a little break. So that ideally, these little breaks are being taken before there's a problem. I may have already mentioned this in this video, but one handy tip is at the beginning of the sermon or just before the sermon, dipping out and then coming back in, so that they're really prepared to sort of sit through the sermon. And that's a time when you should be anticipating more, lots of lap time, lots of contact time, depending on the age of the kid, talking to them a little bit, really helping them stay engaged through that sermon. Not that they'll be understanding the sermon, but you also as a parent, you're realizing this is holy behavior for me I myself am distracted by my kid. I myself am dipping out to the back. And God blesses that. We are participating in this. It's not about me attending a seminar. No, this is a worship service, and the sermon is part of that worship service. Neither you nor your 2-year-old may remember all 3 points that your preacher made, but that's okay, because you were both there and you were both participating, truly. Consider how that may actually be the case. The last one is training at home, and I want to really encourage a positive perspective on this instead of a negative one. And by that, what I mean is training at home should not be training to sit still, but rather training to participate. So what does that look like? That may indeed look like incorporating things like sitting still, listening to a Bible story. It may look like singing at meal times, saying amen loudly, right? One thing that kids of pretty much every age love to do in a worship service is to say amen loudly. And bonus, the whole congregation thinks it's cute. So having that participation. Do things in your house that include physical actions, like kneeling when you pray, raising your hands with certain songs, and encourage your months-old, your year-old, your 2-year-old to do those same things. And hopefully you're at a church that includes some of that. If you have, it's really pretty great when your service has some physical things that you can do with your body. At my church right now, we kneel, we raise our hands, we say loud amens after. That sort of thing is something that little kids can really latch onto. They may not understand the prayer that's happening, but they know that right now mom and dad are kneeling, And so, they're going to kneel. You will find that they will want to. But I would encourage you just to set that up first at home and then at church at the worship service without the distractions to help them sort of, we just need to survive this service. If that's where you find yourself in the service right now, then I would recommend sort of taking a step back, pulling back a little bit, and beginning your focus at home. So again, paternal leadership, anticipation, training at home. I hope you found this video helpful. The peace of Christ be upon you.
What day is it today? Remind me.
It's Sunday, Mr. Pension.
Sunday. And what do we do on a Sunday morning, wherever we happen to be? We go to church, you bloody heathen!